Welcome to But Jesus Drank Wine.
and other stories that kept us stuck. I'm Mead,
And I'm Christy.
and in this podcast, we'll explore the stories that kept us, well, stuck, wanting to drink and not wanting to drink all at the same time.
Join us as we show you that freedom from alcohol does not have to mean a life sentence of misery and missing out.
But actually means living an authentic life full of peace, joy, and purpose. Welcome to the But Jesus Drink Wine podcast. Mead here with you today to introduce you to our very, very special guest. We had a lovely chat with our new friend, Chris Janssen. And Chris is the author of Grace Yourself, How to Show Up for the Sober Life You Want, and a leading result coach in performance and mindset. She has worked with hundreds of sought-after athletes, creatives, soldiers, entrepreneurs, and small businesses internationally, helping them to close the gap between where they are and where they want to be. As a board-certified coach with a master's in counseling psychology and over 25 years of experience, Chris excels in helping high-achieving perfectionists. I see you, Chris. I see you. I'm a performing perfectionist myself. She helps them navigate performance pressure, overcome self-sabotage, and rewrite narratives. A California native, Chris and her husband, Scott, have been married for nearly 30 years. Together, they have raised 3 children, now thriving young adults. Chris and Scott live in LA and love to ski, golf, be with their horses, and adventure outside. We so hope you enjoy this conversation with our friend, Chris.
Hi, Chris. Welcome to But Jesus Drank Wine. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Christine Mead. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I was so excited when we heard from one of your team members that there was another Christian gal talking about an alcohol freedom story, because
Ugh.
we don't hear these a lot, especially with other gals that have written books and started resources. And so we're excited to hear your story.
Well, and likewise, I think I found you on Instagram actually before I was introduced to you, and I got really excited. I thought, that's what I think. That's yes, the faith part of it and the Christian part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talk a lot about stories that kept you stuck, and that's what we
Mhm.
talk about here. So we just love to hear your story. Like the episodes that resonate the most with our audience are always just stories and testimonies. So
Mhm.
tell us how the alcohol struggle started and how you broke free and everything.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So I love that you said that about stories, because I say over and over in this book, Grace Yourself. I start the book off by saying, I can't get you sober. I can't choose sobriety for you. If you choose it, here's some tips and tools. And I think what moves people forward is when we are in community, like your podcast community or a sober community or a church community, and we share stories. We don't sit around giving advice and telling each other what to do. Even as a coach, I don't give advice. I ask questions and sharing stories. We see each other in each other's stories. It might not be exactly the same. It certainly lets us know we're not alone, though. And I think most importantly, that our problem is not significant, that we're not, because that's where my pride and ego can come in. Well, nobody gets it. Nobody else has this problem. And when we have that kind of significance about what's keeping us stuck, we make that our identity and it becomes unhealable. And so thank you for having a podcast and sharing stories. And I know it wasn't comfortable for me to write the book about my sobriety story. It's important though. And my story is that I grew up in a home where my parents, their parents, they did not drink alcohol. So they were part of a religious denomination that didn't drink alcohol, but it wasn't a shame-based thing. They just didn't drink. And I'll say they were really healthy people too. Now that I think about it, the ladies lived a very long time. But I didn't have anyone in my life that identified as an alcoholic or problem drinker or that ever went to recovery or anything like that growing up. I became a social drinker. I had my first drink in high school. I went to public high school in my hometown, and I was also part of the youth group and part of church. So that's where that kind of double life started, where here I was part of a youth group in church, and I knew I didn't want to drink, but then my friends were drinking and their parents drank. And it seemed like it was very confusing as a kid, and a kid meaning 14 years old as a freshman So that's how it started. I knew right away I didn't like it. It didn't sit well with me. It caused a lot of shame and guilt and remorse the next morning. But I kept doing it because I thought I was supposed to. And so that went on for years and years. And the confusing thing is I got sober. I've had two sobrieties. My first one was 2007. And I tell in the book I was sober just shy of 14 years. And then I invited alcohol back in again and had to get sober again. And that ignited the book. But the first time in 2007, it was really different than it is now. We didn't have mocktails and people going alcohol free for health reasons. It was like you're either go to AA, say you're an alcoholic, you have a problem, or you don't. And so, as a high achiever, recovering perfectionist, back then I was a perfectionist, I just kept giving it my all and trying harder to moderate alcohol. And at the same time had shame because I kind of thought because of youth group and things that I wasn't supposed to do this. I mean, I don't really think 14-year-olds are supposed to drink. So that was probably a healthy guilt, but all that to say it was confusing. And so when I got older, I went to college, had babies. I've been married nearly 30 years now. We have 3 kids. They're all in their 20s. And so I had a really wonderful life. I was a mom, a wife, a school mom, great kids. Everything looked really wonderful from the outside. I didn't drink during my pregnancies, but all while I was doing these things on the outside that were good, that I was still trying to moderate alcohol when we had people over or we went to social things. And by that time, I was of the drinking age. I didn't have the guilt. I really thought I was supposed to be able to do this. And so I talk a lot about belief and the narratives we have for ourselves in the book, because my belief was I'm a monster, undisciplined and weak, and don't have willpower because I cannot get this under control. And that was a cuckoo belief because I was crushing everything else. Right. So I didn't see that. All I saw was the one thing I couldn't do and villainized myself for it. So I really believed that I was the problem, not that alcohol was the problem because it's addictive. And so I went on this way from 14 to age 37, not being able to figure this out, having a lot of shame and guilt, being very confused and trying. And as you know, the longer you go working on this, you don't gain more tolerance, you get less. So I became a worse and worse drinker. But as soon I was having too much wine while I was doing dishes, and then it became the kids would go to bed and I would pass out, blacked out, vomit. I mean, really bad effects from alcohol. And nobody except my husband knew. I say today, my kids still have never seen me drunk. So I got really, really lucky. But at age 37, they were still very young. I just one night, I didn't know what to do. I actually was doing back to school paperwork and had too much wine on one of those nights and blacked out, passed out, and woke up in the middle of the night and thought, this is going to kill me. I knew in my gut, this is not okay. And I had asked a pastor, a therapist, a doctor, and a good friend about it, and my husband. And all of these really well-meaning people who had my best interest at heart said, oh, honey, that's not for you. You don't need that. Because on the outside, it didn't look like I did. And I knew I did. So that night, I had so much guilt. I remember thinking, why do you have to drink wine? Because you have pressure for back to school paperwork. So on top of the fact that I was feeling a lot of normal mom pressure, I had dumped more pressure that I shouldn't have. Now I look back and think that's ridiculous. So thank God really thank God I woke up at 3 a.m. and prayed to God. What do? I have no idea what to do. No, I've asked for help. I don't know anyone who's ever had this problem. No, nobody. And so I believe God led me to an internet search that was to a 12-step meeting. And the next day I went to an AA meeting for women in my hometown. And it changed my life because a woman in the group who knew it was my first time said, it's not your fault. You're an alcoholic. I think she either said you're an alcoholic or you have a condition, but it doesn't matter. Whichever one she said was so freeing to me. She said, it's like an allergy and you never have to have another drink again. So I really identified with that alcoholic label was very freeing to me. It wasn't opposite like it is for some people. I talk in the book, like, make sure you know what it is for you. It's not wrong. What we label ourselves isn't let other people pick the labels that work. It was very empowering for me to know that my conundrum had a name and I wasn't alone. And not only did this one other lady have it, but thousands and millions of other people were out there like me. And I just didn't know that. So I stayed in that group. I got a sponsor. I did everything they said. And it changed my life. I enjoyed 13 plus years of continuous sobriety. And that belief, I realize now, and it's one of my coaching tools, that the fact didn't change. I was addicted to alcohol. The story I attached to the fact in that moment went from I'm a monster because I'm addicted to I'm deserving of sobriety and community and recovery because I'm addicted. And it took all the shame and guilt off, years of shame and guilt. And so I work with people on changing the stories they attach to the facts in their life. And that really becomes our beliefs. And a lot of times those form subconsciously without even knowing it. Years and years, we form a belief. And I think we need to really condition those new beliefs because it took a long time to form the old belief. So it takes time to form the new belief. And I got to do that in recovery, and I got to understand what grace was and that I'm not in control of some things. I can have all the willpower and discipline in the world because I do think that's good. I was an athlete, was doing really good at things in my life, and I like discipline and willpower, right? Like I need it in some areas, but things like addiction and alcohol, something that has power over me to control me, I can't apply that same discipline and willpower to that. And that's what I learned in recovery. And that's when I learned that I am powerless over alcohol. And I cried out to God as the one who has the power to do this for me. Well, it's funny because I prayed, I was always a Christian since I was little. So I was praying all those years, God, please lift this from me. Please help me. And in recovery with the group, because I opened up and I had the courage to go and be vulnerable, the group helped me see it's not that God's not helping you. We're going to show you how to let God help you. Right? I wasn't allowing him to help me. I think I prayed for him to help me, but I was still doing it on my own. I wasn't giving him all the power. And I was like, okay, God, help me. And also, I still want to be in control. I want to be in control of my worth. I want to be in control of these things. And because of that, I really didn't understand grace because you don't get to control grace. It's unmerited favor. And I didn't get that until recovery. And then I realized, wow, I've been a really controlling person and I don't get to control my value and my self-worth and the grace that God gives me no matter what I say about it. And that has to do with why the book's called Grace Yourself, because my life was just bracing yourself all the time, white knuckling. And then in recovery, I learned how to accept grace. So that's the story. I'm there. I don't know how far you want me to go, but then, I just had a wonderful life. And then in 2020, some other things happened. I invited it back. And that's a whole part two of the alcohol story. And that inspired me to write the book and put these tools in it because getting sober is a lot harder than staying sober. And I don't suggest people relapse or go back out. And I did. And I have even more coaching tools because of it to help people with everything, not just alcohol. I say in the book, I'm not an addiction expert. I'm not a sobriety coach. I'm a life coach. I have a master's in counseling psychology. I have a lot of coaching tools. And I also am sober and I also have this story. So I shared my own story in order to help people with whatever's keeping them stuck. So it's like, here's these tools. My thing was alcohol. What you're saying, let's use these tools and help you get unstuck. Maybe it's just the controlling thoughts. Maybe it's perfectionism. Maybe it's food. Maybe it is another addiction. Whatever it is, I think the tools in the book will really, I know they're helping people. It just came out last month, but I'm getting feedback and I really believe God's using it for how it was intended, which is wonderful.
Yeah. It feels like we're talking to more and more women who it's a very similar story of they had a chunk of alcohol-free time and then it like snuck back in. There's gals in our community like that. Feels like we've more recently interviewed gals like that. So can you talk a little bit about why it snuck back in, what we were looking for, what job you were giving the alcohol, what you thought you were going to get out of it, and how it snuck back in?
Yes, that's important. So in 2020, I'm not blaming it on the pandemic. I will say we were quarantined though. So it was a perfect storm, a combination of that. I have 3 kids, and the third one, the baby, had just left for college, so we were brand new empty nesters. We're also very high adventure. When I say we, my husband Scott and I, we're high adventure, we're optimistic, we're always up for a new thing. We're high variety. But I also need my centered time. I'm also an introvert a lot of the time, and I need that. So we've kind of over the years found this balance. And that was just an odd time where we thought, you know what? I've always lived in California my whole life, third generation. And at that time we thought all our friends were leaving and moving. And we thought, let's just move, let's have a new adventure. And we're empty nesters now. So we moved to Colorado. And Colorado's just beautiful, like we knew it would be. We like to ski and we have horses. And so we took the horses and we moved there. And I just didn't process being an empty nester. I just thought this is great. And I didn't really process everything that was changing. And I'm still, to be honest, I still don't have all the answers. I'm still processing. Like we have just chit chat over coffee every morning. Just this morning, it's like, I think, this came of that. I mean, I'm still learning things by the day about that transition. But what happened in a nutshell is I got there. It was great. Nothing was wrong. I did not go out on a low note. Everything was great. My coaching business was thriving. I had a lot of coaching tools. I'd published my first book, Living All In, How to Show Up for the Life You Want, full of all my favorite coaching tools, made new friends. And I remember it was just this feeling like I wanted to have a drink, and I hadn't wanted, like, that obsession really had been lifted by God, I believe, for the 13 and a half years. This is a funny thing. I started golfing. My husband's a golfer. So that was another new thing. And I don't love golf, but I was kind of trying to golf because he's a golfer. And it was again like in high school, I thought I should. I thought, well, I'm an empty nester now. I should enjoy this activity. But I really didn't at the time. And that's, I'm not blaming it on any one thing, but if I'm being honest, that is what made me think this sure would be easier with a drink. And everyone drinks when they golf, like the women were drinking. And I just thought, that's probably would make this easier. And so I just ignored it. I thought, well, that's weird. I haven't had a thought like that in 13 and a half years, but it kept coming. And here's what's really weird that I do want people to hear. I thought, well, if God lifted this obsession, then, and he's bringing it back, and it's not more than once. Now it's like a lot. I'm really thinking about that. I thought, isn't this a stronghold? Isn't this like, now I'm thinking about having a drink. Maybe I should just have the drink. Maybe I drink over all these things that now I've worked through, a lot of extended family stuff, being a mom. Maybe I thought, life is good now. I'm way different. I'm way more evolved than when I first got sober. I don't even know if I had a problem with alcohol. I think I just drank to numb these things. And so it was, if you think about it, it was a really logical, like I think a lot. So I gave it a lot of thought, and I ran it past my husband, and he's a normal drinker. He supports me. He understands recovery, but recovery has always been my thing. So he really doesn't get it on a personal level. And so I said, well, I keep craving a drink. And now I'm starting to think, isn't it a stronghold if I'm thinking about not drinking? Maybe I should just have the drink and stop these thoughts and just stop being so, uptight, like have a drink and golf and enjoy. Like maybe this is my time to do that. And he said, I think you're right. And so neither one of us knew. So I realized after the first sip, I realized I have evolved and changed, but alcohol has not. It's just as cunning and baffling and confusing as it ever was, and addictive. But I'm an achiever, so I kept trying. I gave it my all. Like I kept thinking, well, surely I just need more tolerance. Like I just started. Let's give it a few months. So I just kept trying. And it, just like before, the more I worked at it, the worse it got. But my brain, because it's so full of these coaching tools, and you push through the comfort zone, and you do these things, and you tweak the strategy to get your outcome, right? I was treating it like any other goal that I help my client get. And it's not. It's an addictive substance. I do identify as an alcoholic. I'm someone who cannot drink alcohol. It is like an allergy to me. And so I ended up back in my 12-step recovery group, and that's when everything changed and I was able to start sobriety again. But I was had a lot of pride and embarrassment about starting on day 1, so I didn't want to go back, which is so silly because nobody cares. Everyone embraced me. It was just my own pride. I didn't want to go back, so I did a lot of different things first. I did online group. By this time, we had Quit Lit and all these new podcasts like yours. So I absorbed all of it. And I got really confused. I got really confused. And so for me, that's what helped with going back to what worked the first time. And that's what I do now. And I feel safe. I felt like I'm going to get a tattoo on my forehead that says die sober. So I just, or a shirt, don't go out, ask me why, so I'm back now, but all of that inspired just more tools and sharing that story with other people.
Good. Yeah, you mentioned a couple of times, and we're such big fans here, obviously, because we have our But Jesus Drank Wine community. But you mentioned several times the power of a community where you can be courageous and bring your struggle and be vulnerable. And it sounds like that was kind of such a turning point for you the first time and a turning point for you the second time. I was just thinking of the listener who is out there who's maybe absorbing all the things and listening, but feeling isolated and disconnected. How would you guide that woman towards finding that non judgmental community that they can open up to and find that kind
Mhm.
of that safe space?
Keep looking and pray to find it. And
Yeah, good.
I don't, I, you know, it's hard to answer because it is different for everybody, but you've got to stick to what's working for you. So if a community is confusing or it's giving you thoughts that you're less than or whatever it is, that's probably not your community. So keep searching, pray that you will find something and just it's okay to be vulnerable. A lot of these groups are anonymous. For me, it needed to be an in-person group, but that's not that way for everybody. And I know
Yeah.
that. And I'm very, I think all of sobriety or recovery or whatever word people want to use or not use, I think it's all a win, right? We
Yeah.
have different churches, different denominations, different therapists, different groups for all people because we're all different. God made all of us different. So we have to have all these different recovery groups. And when I first got sober, having only one option, yes, that's the option that worked again, but it was confusing. I love that we have all these options, right? We have different groups and you can label yourself an alcoholic or not. Or so I would say keep asking that question. Is this group or this label moving me in the direction I want to go? And if not, keep going. It doesn't mean it didn't work. That's like that old perfectionist way. Don't crumple up the paper and throw it in the trash. Just tweak the strategy, but don't ditch the outcome. The outcome is freedom, right? The outcome is sobriety or freedom from whatever it is that's keeping you stuck. And it's out there. I guarantee you it's out there. We have to just keep moving forward and a lot of these, like maybe you don't end up in one community, but being in a community can lead to what's next. A lot of finding what we want is finding out what we don't want. So finding what works, you have to find what doesn't work and we're on the road to finding what works. How many of us just nail it the first time? So
Yeah.
that's what I
Good.
would say.
Yeah, that's so, so good. So tell us what kind of led you to write the book and tell us about the book and what listeners can expect to get out of the book and all the things.
Yeah, so I wrote the book during that actually before I even got felt like, okay, I'm back. I'm back. This is my second sobriety. I'm back. I started it, at least the outline of it, while I was trying to find what was going to work for me to get sober again. And it was a lot of that writing down for myself. I never intended for people to read it. It was just for me at first, writing down what wasn't working, right? Like, oh, how funny. I went out on a high note, not a low note. So that whole story really that moving to Colorado and experimenting with alcohol again and then finding my community that worked for me again is what inspired writing the book. And at first, when you write, this, you write like no one's going to read it and then you edit it a ton. So It was a vulnerable story for me to share. I'm glad I did it. I think God wanted me to do it. And I think it's my job to be a good steward of the message that He put on my heart. People reading it will get out of it how to get unstuck from anything that either has them in a false belief. Even if they don't know it's false yet, it will bring that to light because it's very interactive. I put exercises in the book. I ask a lot of questions and leave room for people to answer the questions. It will bring to light what's keeping you stuck and then help you see what you really want and then how to choose and be honest with yourself that moving toward that, especially if you've had one of these narratives running through your brain for a long time, if we're in an old pattern, that it will just reassure people, look, it might not feel great right away. You might not believe the new story right away, and that's okay. Like a muscle at the gym. We're conditioning this new thing over here. And so it just is very encouraging to keep people going and then really know what they want and why. That to me, that's really important. Why they want it and then go for it,
Mhm.
no matter what it is. And that's what they'll get out of the book. They'll reach the goal by the end of the book. If you really go through all the exercises thoughtfully and don't just skim through it super fast, they will really be honest with themselves about what they want and the cost of doing it, right? Like, yes, whatever you're trying to give up or add into your life, maybe you're adding exercise or you're giving up alcohol. Yes, be honest. That will be hard because you're changing a pattern. But then you get to get leverage on yourself through one of the exercises and go, well, it's harder to not do it though, if that truly is what you want. So you get to choose your hard and then just be encouraged to go for it.
Imagine stepping into a vibrant, warm community where faith, friendship, and freedom from alcohol all come together. That's exactly what you'll experience in the But Jesus Drank Wine community. Each week, our members gather for connection calls that feel like a breath of fresh air, a time to share, grow, and support one another. With an encouraging leadership team, a dedicated prayer request space, and connection opportunities in every time zone, you don't have to walk this journey alone. Plus, we bring you masterclasses with expert guests, optional book clubs and Bible studies, and so much more. And for those ready to go even deeper, we offer a small group coaching space called The Missing Piece. With weekly recorded coaching calls, it's a supportive place for women committed to breaking free from alcohol. We're here to hold space for sober and sober-curious women who love Jesus or are eager to reconnect with him. Wherever you are on your path, you'll feel seen, supported, and strengthened here. As one member described, quote, the BJDW community is unique because there's a connection between faith and freedom from alcohol that I haven't been able to find in any other online space or through my church. Ready to join the sisterhood? Head over to butjesusdrankwine.com/community or click the link in the show notes to learn more. We can't wait to meet you. I'm so curious about the perfectionism piece because I think something that, and we've kind of touched on this earlier, but I would be curious how you would, speaking to the listener who has had goes at this and has not found freedom fully or the way they want, but they have this idea of like perfection in mind. So what would be some tips for someone that's dealing with the perfectionism in all the things, not just with their freedom from alcohol journey?
Right, in all the things, that's right.
All the things.
Look at the rules you have set up for getting what you want. And again, a lot of this stuff we've been doing subconsciously for so long. So until you're reading a book or working with a coach or writing it down, pencil and paper, not on a computer, like
Yes.
really getting it in your physiology, until you thoughtfully think, you might not have realized you set up these rules for oneself for getting the goal. So I'll use something really simple. Like I was working with people over the holidays that wanted to, like perfectionistic people hosting family or hosting a dinner. So let's say that you set a goal that you want to host a lovely holiday dinner, right? And then I would ask, what is the rule? Like, how will you know when you've hosted that lovely dinner? What will it look like? That's the important question right there. Because what's a lovely dinner to me might not be a lovely dinner to you. So the perfectionist might tell me, well, everybody will have to have a good time. The food will have to be perfect. The whatever else.
There won't be any drama with
There won't, yes,
yeah.
that's a great one.
Yeah.
That
I
came
had
up,
a
yeah.
client tell me once that there had to be 6 pies. I was like,
Six
"Really?"
pies. Six
Very
pies is a
specific
good one.
too.
Yeah, no drama. So let's stick with the six pies and the no drama. So I will have them write that. So those I call rules for achieving your goal. So, okay. Well, now if we go through those rules, the six pies, the host actually has control over that because you can set a goal and make six pies. No drama, we have no control over because it's other people. If people have fun and enjoy the food, we have no control over. So we're going to put that in what we have no control over. That people will laugh and have fun or that the food will taste good, we really don't have control over. We can make the six pies, but we can't control how they're going to come out, right? And so what we want to do is all those things we don't have control over, we're going to remove those from being the rule for getting the goal and just stick to what we have control over. And then now you have an achievable, attainable standard, a realistic standard, a realistic goal. Perfectionists, though, if it's not perfect, it's trash. They might self sabotage on the way to the goal. And really, when they sit and look at it, they didn't have control over a lot of these expectations they had. So they're constantly in a lose lose, right? It's just they're making it very easy to fail and making it tragically hard to succeed.
Yeah.
And the thing is, for people like us that are high achievers, high growth, a lot of times in life we pull that off. That's kind of luck, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've over time, I mean, I'm 55, like over time that catches up with you.
Mhm.
Like
It works until it doesn't.
it works until it doesn't. And so, I mean, one of the things before I got sober the first time, one of the main times I would drink was when I was trying to be hospitable and have people over. Here you have all these little kids and you're trying to get the house clean and the husband's working so many hours because we're young. And so I would have wine and think, and it just like that, it made me relax. So I don't want to lie about that. I want to be honest. Yes, it worked. It helped me be more hospitable, but it also caused tons of problems the next day or in the long run. So be honest with that. So it would have been, working with people to go, yeah, that will work. That's one option to drink the wine. Another option is maybe don't offer to host something that's unrealistic, or at least if you're going to, let's bring the standards and the expectations down.
Yeah, there's so much of my life was directed on it. Well, it was just, I know it was directed by my thinking and my beliefs. I just didn't know what they were. And so much of my life was on autopilot. And one of my favorite things that I've learned from getting stuck, in the drinking cycle and then finding freedom is just being curious about what are the things that we're telling ourselves and the rules that we're setting for ourselves and all of this stuff that's just like playing in the background and driving the light, our little car for us. And we're just passengers too. And it always comes back to like curiosity, right? Like we get to pay attention to that stuff, but until we know that we can and that curiosity is a superpower, then we don't. And we're just, anyway, there's not really a question. Not just, yes, I'm with you.
Curiosity is key, I think.
Yeah, 100%. So one of the things that you talk about in the book is tips and questions to ask yourself when you get a craving. So tell the listeners about that.
Yeah, when you get a craving, I call it commitment over craving or decision over desire. And that's going to go back to your why, right? Like knowing why you committed to this thing in the first place. So these questions could be, and this is all in the book, I have blanks so people can write it down. What discomfort am I choosing to soothe or numb? So first identify it. How has soothing or numbing this served me? Which that goes back to be honest, like I said about, yeah, the sip of wine or the glass of wine did help me be more hospitable. So it did serve me. So be honest about that. What has it cost me? Right? Okay. So write that down. What has it cost those I love? And maybe it didn't affect other people. If it did, write it down. What will it cost my future if I continue to soothe or numb this? What is the cost of choosing to feel life instead of numbing? Like, what if I just did the party and didn't have the glass of wine, right? So, like, write down what the cost of that is, right? Because, yeah, I'll be a little uncomfortable. So, write that down. And then here's where you get the leverage. You go, is this greater or less than the cost of continuing to numb? So you've written down the cost of doing it or not doing it. You're honest about the pros and cons of both. And then you decide which costs more, right? And so if something's really not good for us or going to move us forward, like for the three of us, alcohol, then will be a greater cost. If we kept alcohol in our life and we're honest, the cost would have been greater than the cost of giving it up. And then ask, what will I gain when I lay my numbing patterns down in order to show up for my life? How will this benefit my loved ones, if it will affect other people? What would my life be like if I changed this now? And how does this make me feel? And then ask, because the obsession I want to leave behind drains me of strength and joy, what lifestyle choices bring me the most strength and joy? And so start getting curious about those substitutions and those things, the things we were using, what we want to get rid of for. What else could bring that? For me, it's running or being around animals. And so we're going to write down some substitutions. And then the last one is, how will I make the lifestyle choices I named my new ritual? So that's important. Be specific, because we do need to condition things if we're changing a pattern. So specifically write down, like if you added in, walking, what day, what time of day, write that down and be specific about it.
Yeah, I love that so much. I feel like that's a great Tiny Tina actually right there, is just get really specific. And I love the way that you have the space in the book to write things out like that. I think that's so important because I mean, I'm just going to call him our best friend. Dr. Lee Warren always talks about actually getting really intentional about interrupting that pattern, because when it comes to alcohol, your brain has consented to automate. And so it's going to be automatic unless you put something new in its place. And like you said earlier, like that's not going to be something that you have to think about forever, but in the beginning, you definitely do have to. And so can you read the last two again? I feel like those are really, really good. Sorry, I'm going to make you open up the book again. But I feel like that's a great way to leave with our listeners, as two things to think about that can bring in new intentional action to like interrupt those patterns.
Yes. Okay. The last two were, now consider this important question and the follow-up. 1, because the obsession I want to leave behind drains me of strength and joy, what lifestyle choices bring me the most strength and joy? And then write those down. And then, how will I make the lifestyle choices I named my new ritual?
Yeah, that's so good.
And that's where you get specific. Yeah.
Love it. So, so good. Can you tell the ladies listening where they can find you and where they can get the book?
Yes, the book is where books are sold, and Chris Janssen Coaching is my website. The number 3 Janssen's my Instagram. So my website, I keep it updated with book things and coaching services, and my Audible, narrated by me, first time ever, just came out yesterday. So you have an option for Audible too.
How did you find recording the book? Where did you record it? We might have recorded our books in the same place. Where did you record yours?
In the Valley in LA,
Okay.
Tarzana.
Okay, I was in Santa Monica.
Okay.
Wasn't it weird?
Luckily, that would have been closer, but
wasn't it weird hearing, this is gonna sound gross, but like your saliva and stuff like in
oh
your
my gosh. Yeah.
I was like, I never want to listen to my saliva again.
And then did you get all the directions ahead of time about what not to eat so there's no gurgles and yeah. And then I kept popping the peas and I'm going, oh my gosh. And I listen to Audible. I love reading books with that. And they're so professional now. So of course I was thinking, oh my gosh, like here I am narrating my own book. I'm not a professional actor, but I listened to it yesterday and I think it's good. I'm glad I narrated my own. Yeah. Even though I'm not a professional actor.
Yeah, same. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, everybody go look up Chris's book, listen to it on Audible, get the book, check her out. Thank you so much for joining us. We loved meeting you, and we should grab lunch when I'm in LA this summer or when you're visiting your daughter in London.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I would love that. I'll need to get your contact info. Definitely. Thank you for having me on, and good luck with everything. And thank you for doing a podcast. I know it's a lot of work, and I so appreciate your stewarding this message that you have and inviting other people to share, because that's what's helping all of us.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for saying that. We appreciate you. All right, ladies, we'll see you next Monday. Thanks, Chris.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us again this week. You can find all of our episodes at butjesusdrinkwine.com, and be sure to follow us over on Instagram, Love Life Sober, and I'm Not Sober, I'm Free.
To learn more about what we do, you can visit our website, meethollandshirley.com and lovelifesober.com.
Take a screenshot of this podcast and share it with a friend or two.
And don't forget to subscribe to our pod so you don't have to worry about missing a single episode. And if you love what we're doing, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify.
This helps more women who are feeling stuck and alone in the overdrinking cycle find hope and encouragement.
Thanks, ladies. We so appreciate you, and we'll see you next Monday.